have to say, after that beautiful Sim Shalom, I hate to break the mood with this sermon. The golden age of American Jews is ending, screamed the cover of April's The Atlantic magazine. Subheadings blared these messages: an era of acceptance is in danger. Hatred from the right and the left. Jews fleeing public schools. An era of acceptance and achievement is in danger. This story coming just 7 months after the horrific atrocities of October 7th, Franklin Foer's stark assessment of our present realities crystallized what so many of us were thinking but had not yet articulated. Something felt palpably different about this moment. Not everybody wants to talk about it. It's painful, and it's scary. This past year has demolished a flurry of foundational narratives for us in the Jewish community, and we are left wondering, what is going on in our world? What is going on in our country? What is going on in Israel and the Middle East? And what is going on with our people? So as your rabbis focus on what we consider to be the most important themes of this moment, we are wrapping our sermons around the value of sacred listening. Because if we are not really able to communicate with each other, truly listen and hear each other, we won't be able to respond best as a community. In my messages, I will be focusing on 2 subjects that call to us with urgency. This morning, I'll be exploring where we are as an American Jewish community. And on the night Kol Nidre, I'll be looking at our relationship with Israel and Zionism. And I'm going to use a different format. In keeping with sacred listening, I'm encouraging all of us to share our core values about our Jewish identities, including our fears and hopes, with the most important people in our lives. I'm encouraging us to put our hearts out there on a platter for those to see. And then, after sharing them, to really listen. I'm going to do that with my 3 children, Rachel, Abby, and Ellie. And I'm encouraging us all to do something similar. I'm going to model that and go first with this sermon this morning. To younger generations, this has been a year like no other. All of us have mourned and celebrated family moments. For my family in particular, these included some of the saddest moments we've ever gone through. The death of my great-nephew Theo to brain cancer, and the death of my mother Francine and my father-in-law Joe. And there's been wonderful happiness, too. Those were followed by my daughter Rachel's wedding to Andrew, and then my 60th birthday, a time for both celebration and reflection. In addition to these family moments that were important, my whole year bears the imprint of October 7th and the ongoing pain that began October 8th. In one way or the other, every day since then has been impacted by the attack on Israel and its aftermath. This morning, I want to share what's in my heart in the hopes that you will hear and that you too will share so that I can hear. I know we will not always agree, but I also know that we must continue to share with each other because we love each other, and we will always walk life's paths together. As a parent of children being raised in a committed Jewish home, I was always aware that you brought your Jewish identities with you everywhere you went, and that never worried me, not even when you traveled abroad. The relative safety and comfort that I felt as a Jew in America felt normal. But maybe that normal feeling wasn't, historically speaking, actually normal. I was on a webinar a month ago for rabbis preparing for the High Holy Days, and a rabbi around 20 years older than I made a startling statement. These are not unprecedented times, he told all of us. This period since the end of World War II, those were unprecedented times. And in fact, that is exactly what your Grandpa Joe often said. What we are facing now, well, that's how it's normally been for Jews throughout history. But the world I was raised in reflected different historical realities. In my religious schools of the 1970s, in rabbinical school in the 1990s, at synagogues for the past 30 years, there were two elemental premises that protected us: the stability of our liberal democracy, with its separation of powers, independent judiciary, and a system of checks and balances between branches of government, and two, the sovereignty of Israel. A slogan Jews quoted often in the second half of the 20th century was "never again." We would never allow ourselves to be victimized again. It's hard to imagine how much 1948 changed our self-conception. A few weeks ago, I led a funeral for a congregant in his 90s, and his children recounted that for this man, the creation of Israel changed everything in terms of anti-Semitism. Now, we Jews were warriors, and we were capable of defending ourselves. The catastrophe of October 7th and its aftermath have violently shaken the two narratives that have been the foundation in my life, and at least in the beginning of yours. That Jews in America could comfortably combine being Jewish and American, and that Jews in Israel who now had a state could exert control over their futures. As a rabbinic colleague, Rachel Timoner, has expressed, there were not one, but two devastating events. October 7th destroyed us, but October 8th took whatever pieces we had left and destroyed those as well, as we watched our allies, our organizations, and our institutions that we thought would stand by us as American Jews all dissolve into Jew hatred, anti-Semitism, and virulent anti-Zionism. This hurt me at the deepest level. After all the causes across progressive circles where we in the Jewish community stood side by side and marched with our allies, it pained me to feel that we in the Jewish community had been mostly abandoned. Not all of us left us to be on our own, but most. Which makes me even more appreciative of the local city and county leaders and politicians clergy members, Burlingame and San Mateo County school principals and superintendents who stood with us and have continued to collaborate and try to solve problems together through very difficult conditions. There's another narrative in our current reality that makes me rethink. As part of the Reformed Jewish community of the Bay Area, most of us tend to consider ourselves highly assimilated into American society. We feel that we are fully engaged in American culture. And if we now need to reconsider the promise of American liberal democracy and whether the existence of the State of Israel protects us, our American Jewish identity demands reconsideration as well. The fact that so many areas of American society marginalize Jews the day after October 7th demands of us a new way of understanding our Jewish identities. Our commitment to American society and communal and intersectional causes blinded us to the fact that, just like that, we could be screamed at for being Jewish. What do we do with that discomfort, knowing that is happening as Jews walk across their campuses or show up for a cause? I don't know if this is the end of the golden age of American Jews or not. But no matter what, the situation has changed dramatically. We can't act as if things are the same. There's a helpful way of looking at the world that Rabbi B'nai Lappi describes. They put it this way: and there are three, and only three, responses to a crash, ever. Option one, which is denying that a crash has occurred and reverting to your master story and hanging on for dear life, and people tend to build walls around that old master story to make sure that nothing interferes or threatens it again. Option two would be accepting that your master story has crashed, completely rejecting that master story, and jumping off into a completely new story. Option three is to accept that the story has crashed. But instead of abandoning the story, you stay in it, reinterpreting it through the lens of the crash and building a new story from the amalgamation of the original story and the crash material, and reinterpreting all of them. I choose option three. It's not an option to close our eyes and pretend this didn't happen. We will need to reimagine, and we will need to reinvent. And to my daughters and younger generations, I want you to know that my generation will need the creativity and different perspectives that could only come from your generations. An area of Jewish identity that begs our attention is the balance of two opposites: Jewish particularism and Jewish universalism. Over time, Reformed Judaism leaned toward emphasizing our universalist message and articulated our universal hopes, dreams, and values, at the expense, I might argue, of our particularist ones. But this past year, that universal message took a devastating hit. We have invested so much time in the notion of tikkun olam, of repairing our world. And that as Shalom Hartman Institute President Yehuda Kurtzer argues, is really a very American version of inclusion and equality. We may be 0.2% of the world's population, 2% of the USA's population, but we still talk of our obligation to heal the whole world. And that's beautiful, this notion of caring as much about the non-Jew as the Jew. We don't want to give that notion up. But we might do well to revise how much time we put into thinking about the well-being of Jews everywhere. And that includes right here in our country, right here in our state, and right here in our town. When vile anti-Semitic graffiti shows up in Burlingame schools, it deeply hurts my heart. And I hope that you and your peers will care just as much. And at the same time, I really do think it's a false narrative to think that we need to choose between these two visions of Jewish life, particularism and universalism. We can double down on both. We can lead with our Jewish identity, and we can answer the ancient call to justice for all people, working side by side with people of all backgrounds. We can deepen the degree to which we care about our people, and we can double down on our efforts to reinvest in our relations with leaders and organizations. We will need to rebuild our faith again in the partners who didn't call us during the past year, or who worse, posted terrible things about Jews on social media. I close with this image. We Jews have always thought that we were living in the end of times. We are not the first generation to question if our surroundings are safe. So all these millennia later, there must be something that we have done right as a Jewish people, because we're still here. One of those things has always been our sense of hope and our ability and desire to work for it. There's a beautiful midrash about the first two human beings, Adam and Eve, who were not told by God on day one that the sun would rise again. So as they saw the sun setting, they wept and they held on to each other. Imagine their relief when they saw the sun rise again, and that they were blessed with the ability to create and recreate. And they would find resilience, and they would keep creating. Like us, they did not have all the details, and they did not have any instructions. They probably felt like we do, ill-equipped to face the challenge. But they did. And the next day, they expressed their gratitude. Elie Wiesel had a wonderful line that I hope will bring you comfort as it does me. God gave Adam a secret. And that secret was not how to begin, but how to begin again. How to begin again. We Jews have always found ways, from ancient times until now, to emerge from dark periods. We have activated hope as a superpower. It reminds us that we are not powerless. It reminds us that we always have agency. And I'll share where I find hope. Our infinite capacity to meet crisis with reinvention and cultural creativity. It is our Jewish superpower. Throughout our story, all the great books of our tradition were written in response to catastrophe. The Talmud was created as the Second Temple was destroyed and in the wake of Roman destruction. The Zohar was created out of the destruction of Jewish life in Spain and Portugal. Hasidism was created in the dark shadow of anti-Semitism and destruction in the 17th century. Zionism grew in Europe when the light from the Enlightenment cratered, and as Jew hatred grew. And after the Shoah, not one but two wonders created. The Jewish people created a whole network of institutions that have sustained Jewish life. And our people created the state of Israel. And later in the 20th century, we modeled God's power to redeem, and we redeemed Jews in Russia and Ethiopia. I am turning to you this Rosh Hashanah with my breaking heart this year. And I'm hoping that you will continue to care deeply about Jewish peoplehood and our Jewish people. Here in America, in the land of Israel, and across the globe, allowing yourselves to hurt when your fellow Jews are hurting, when they are demonized for simply being Jewish, or when they are demonized for simply caring about Israel. I pray that your generations understand how important it is to show up for your Jewish people, and that you will continue to feel the desire to be part of whatever Jewish community you are living in. This past year has made this truism even more apparent. How a society treats its Jews in any country, but especially in a democratic country, is a measure of the health of the country. And when the Jews are targeted, other ethnic groups will also be targeted. When society careens toward a tendency to deny the humanity of the other, our Jewish tradition reminds us that every human being was created in the image of God and is worthy of dignity simply because they were created. I am proud to be part of a religious community that gave that simple but deep and profound notion to the rest of the world. And I hope you take pride in that as well. I love this community and love that we share this faith, this people, and this story. Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may this be God's will.